In this video, I show you Moonstone by Goblin King Games. Before we get into today's video, just want to share what the GGGG is for this month. Every month, Bob the Beholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of August 2021, we have this fully printed and painted Hagglethorn Hollow Tower. We have a bunch of PDFs of Dungeoneers, as well as the Ancient Evil City Crawler 3D set. If you haven't seen that video, go ahead and check it out here. And also a crowdfunder that is still being voted upon. Please check out my Patreon page if you want to get in on that. Recently, Goblin King Games had a second Kickstarter for Moonstone, their fantasy skirmish game, and I was intrigued by the miniatures that I saw there, that they were super unique and whimsical and really fun to look at. And so I reached out to them and I asked if they would be willing to send me this 2-player starter set in exchange for a review video, and sure enough they sent it to me, which I'm really glad. It came in this pretty small box, but you have everything that you need in order to play the game, including this measuring ruler as well. I had a lot of fun painting up these miniatures. I think they are super unique and interesting to look at. The expressions on their faces are really cool too, and I can really tell whether or not I really like models based off of whether or not I want to keep painting. And even though I needed to paint these up really quickly using mostly contrast colors to make this video, I just found myself wanting to paint more and put in more details. So that is a sure sign that I really do like the miniatures a lot. And after painting this initial starter set, which is enough, which gives you 4 miniatures per side, both the Dominion side as well as the Commonwealth side. I definitely will be getting more expansions because technically you're supposed to have 6 models per side to do a full skirmish game. But having 4 to a side definitely is enough to get your feet wet and make you curious about what other factions and miniatures are out there. So this is definitely great because it does have everything that you need, all the cards that you need. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at their website as well as the late back of the Arising Kickstarter so that I can walk you through that. Also, I do have a very quick tutorial. Now, the reason why I'm not doing a full-blown tutorial on how to play this game is because there is already a really good tutorial by TNG, and go ahead and check out that link right here. That is a really thorough and good tutorial on how to play this game. It is an hour long, but it is an excellent way to learn how to play the game if you want all of the details, even including the advanced rules. I just want to show you a very quick overall feel of the game and some of the basic rules, and so mine is a lot shorter. But I do just want to really quickly start off just by saying I really do like this game a lot. It has very unique combat dynamics in the sense that you're not really rolling any dice. The only dice that you're rolling is for initiative at the beginning of each turn, as well as these 4-sided die that you use actually as moonstones. So the whole point of this game is to collect these moonstones, these 4-sided die, to dig them out before the morning comes so that you can go and sell them. This is the currency for this world. And the battle, how that happens, is all based on cards. There's a bluffing mechanic. There is sort of a rock, paper, scissors kind of attacks that you make with each other. And so that really creates a very unique combat system that I really haven't seen anywhere else. So this game is very, very unique. Also, I really like their activation system, where based off of how much health you have, dictates the number of energy tokens that you can have, and the energy tokens are basically activation tokens, which enables you to do all of your basic moves, all of your melee attacks, as well as arcane attacks. So I think that is really an ingenious way to have different levels of activations based on not only your health, but also the models as well. This game does have a low model count, so like I said, 6 models to a side is typical for a 2-player game. It is designed to go up to 4 players, which I've never played 4-player, I've only played 2-player, but that's a fun way to involve other people. There's a couple other factions other than just the goblins here, as well as the humans, and that makes me curious because I really want to check out the fairies and the gnomes. So everything about this game I really like a lot. And because it does have a low model count, even though each one of the characters is very unique and has different abilities, it isn't overwhelming because you're really only keeping track of your faction's stats. So that also is a unique aspect to this game. And because the goal is after 4 turns, having the most of these moonstones as possible, that really is the scenario. So that simplifies sort of what the goal is and what you're trying to do. Now with the Arising Kickstarter, what they're introducing is a campaign system, a campaign story arc, more explanation into the world and lore of Moonstone and why you're even gathering Moonstone. So I'm really excited about that. I think the art is fantastic in the books as well, highly stylized, just like the miniatures. So if you're looking into getting into a whimsical, pretty fun, very unique fantasy style skirmish game, then I would highly suggest Moonstone. This is a great game. The only downside is because it's coming from the UK, it might take a while for them to ship it to you. I haven't really found a US distributor for this, so you're going to pay a little bit in shipping costs. And the miniatures themselves, although they are really high quality resin, they are on the pricier side. But again, because you have a low model count, overall I think the game is relatively not a huge money investment. So seriously, I do want to suggest you looking into this game because I think it is fantastic and I just love the aesthetics of it. Also, when I saw the printable scenery, Hagglethorn Hollow, these really whimsical 3D prints, I thought immediately, I'm getting these buildings just for this game because I think these buildings match the style of Moonstone. So as you can see here, the buildings that I've printed up so far, as they slowly release each of the models, really does fit this aesthetic and this style as well. So I think that's perfect. If you want to see that video reviewing these buildings, go ahead and go here. So we're going to go ahead and dive into the quick tutorial on how to play so that you get a general sense. And then after that, we're going to go directly into checking out what is happening on their web store, as well as the current late back for the Arising Kickstarter. So there are basically 3 phases to each turn, and that is the replenish step, where you place the number of energy tokens based off of how much health. So since Beaky Bobby here is full health, he gets 4 energy tokens. And so I went ahead and just placed everyone's energy tokens. So that is the replenish step. And then next will be the activation step, where you trade back and forth and everyone is activated. And then finally at the very end, you discard any unused energy tokens because they don't just add to the next round. You just start all over again. So to figure out initiative, you go ahead and roll. And at the very beginning of setup, whoever rolled for and chose to be the early bird, they get to choose which edge of the board they want to deploy at, which can be advantageous based off of the random placement of these moonstones. But the benefit that the other side gets is that they basically get a bonus to their initiative rolls for the subsequent turns. So here you see that turn 1 they automatically get first initiative, and then the subsequent turns they add to whatever they roll. So let's say that the Commonwealth team went ahead and got early bird, and so through this game demo we're going to go ahead and have the Dominion forces get the bonuses for their initiative. So here, since it would be the we wouldn't necessarily roll, but let's say it's the second round, we would add a +2 here to make it 5 versus 2, so they can go first, or they can choose to hand it off and have the other side go first instead. But they're going to go ahead and choose to go first, and there's a couple of options to demonstrate. So all models do get a free jog action just once per turn, and they can move up to 4 inches. What I'm going to do is have Beaky Bobby go ahead and use his free 4-inch move, jog, to go all the way up and be base to base with this Moonstone. And that didn't spend any of his energy, but he is going to go ahead and spend 2 energy. The first one to reduce this to 1, and then the second one to 0, which makes him pick it up. So I'm going to go ahead and put this Moonstone onto his card, signifying that he is carrying it. Because again, what determines the winner for this game is whoever has the most Moonstones at the end of the 4th turn. Actually, one of the characteristics of Beaky Bobby is that the harvest action, which is harvesting the Moonstone, which she just did, requires +1 energy. So normally models will just use an energy token to harvest, do 1 harvest action, but because it requires a 2 energy for Beaky Bobby in particular, that does spend the other 2 energy that he has. So his turn is over. Now it's going to alternate over to the Commonwealth side, and what I'm going to do is have Eric activate the Squire. He's going to spend 2 of his energy and target a noble, which is Baron von Fancy Hat, and going to give him 2 energy. So he spends 2 energy and actually gives it to Baron von Fancy Hat and gives him 2 more, which will give him more activations when he activates. And then Eric is going to go ahead and use this free jog move, and that's going to enable him to go up and start harvesting. So he is going to go ahead and spend his 1 energy to harvest this once, which reduces it down to a 2. Now it's the Dominion's turn, and we're going to go ahead and activate Doug the Flatulent, and he is going to move up for his jog first, which places him right here. So if he does want to move more beyond his 4-inch jog, he can do a step. So any subsequent steps is just 1 inch of movement, but every inch costs 1 energy. He'll spend 2 to move forward 2 because he wants to provide a little bit of protection. And we'll end up here in front of Beaky Bobby. And Doug's melee range is actually 3 inches. Actually, he's within 3 inches of Eric the Squire, so he will go ahead and do a melee attack against Eric. So a melee attack does cost 1 energy, so he's going to spend 1. Both players draw melee cards equal to their melee stat, and the attacker draws +2 cards. So in this game, which I really like, bonus goes to the attacker because you're getting an extra +2 cards. So this is how melee works. We'll first look at Doug the Flatulent, and we see his melee stat here means he's going to draw 4 melee cards. And then let's go ahead and take a look at Eric the Squire, who is drawing 3 melee cards. So Doug is going to do +2, so he's going to draw a total of 6 versus Eric's 3. So here are all of the melee cards, and he has 6, so he has a lot that he can draw from. But if we look at Doug's card, we see that if a character deals slicing melee damage, he can defend against it to nothing. But if Doug does piercing damage, he increases the damage dealt by +1. So he's going to find one that has piercing. So these are guards, so he's not going to guard. But if we look at these, we see that thrust is piercing, and then rising attack can be any one of these 3. So these 2 are actually pretty good, either thrust or rising attack. So he's going to go ahead and choose rising attack and put it face down. And Eric has these 3 cards, and all of these are actually attack cards rather than defense cards. He really wanted a defense card like High Guard or something like that. But because he doesn't have defense, he's going to go ahead and just try to defend as well as possible. So he's going to go ahead and choose rising attack. So he puts this face down, and then they both flip it over. Doug the Flatulent is saying that he's choosing piercing, and then Eric the Squire is going to go ahead and choose this to be a slicing attack. So they both look at what the other chose, so they both are going to do 1 point of damage to each other, because that's what happens here. You deal 1 point of damage based off of cross-referencing which one they picked. Now Eric the Squire didn't choose well when he said slicing, because Lance basically reduces the damage to 0. So Doug isn't going to take any damage. And this character did deal piercing damage, so he's going to increase that by 1. So instead of just 1 point of damage to Eric, he's going to actually do 2. Now had Doug the Flatulent had another rising attack, after revealing his cards, he could have placed another, let's say it was rising attack next to it, and you would just add up all the damage based off of whatever the deal damage was here. So if he had another rising attack, he would have added another point of damage for a total of 3 for this attack. But as it is, Eric took 2 points of damage, so just mark off the boxes here. And then the more damage, if he takes another point of damage, he's going to be reduced to just 2 energy tokens at the beginning of next round. Now, in this circumstance, even though it was good to show what melee combat looks like with both sides being able to attack each other, in this case, Eric would actually not have done any damage to Doug because his range from his melee weapon is only 1 inch. So if you're not able to engage, then even though you go through the whole combat and you draw cards, you're not going to do any damage to the other person. You have to be within range. So with his final, he can go ahead and attack again and then would redraw all the cards and do the same thing over again. But let's go ahead and just move on for the sake of this demo. Now it goes over to the Commonwealth side, and let's go ahead and have Flintlock engage, and he's going to go ahead and do his shoot musket ability. So everything down here is actually an arcane attack, and most ranged attacks are going to be arcane. So it's going to take 1 energy for him to shoot, so we're going to go ahead and remove 1. But let's go ahead and see what eligible targets he has. So clearly he can shoot Doug, but really what he wants to do is hit Beaky Bobby, since he wants to kill him and get him to drop the Moonstone that he has. So he does have line of sight, because any point of the attacker's base, if it can touch any point on the defender's base, then he does have line of sight. But in this case, because some parts do cross over obstacles, and in this case Doug and other figures do count as obstacles, Beaky Bobby does have light cover. And so that means he's going to draw 1 less card for his arcane attack. Also, if we look over here, if you were to target the grub, obstacles don't completely block line of sight. But in this case, if you can draw center to center, and that center line is obstructed, and in this case it's obstructed both by this crate as well as with Doug, that means that he actually takes 2 less cards, because he has heavy cover. And then let's see what his line of sight is to Vicious Midget. And as we can see here, center to center, it is not crossing any obstacle, but on the side it is crossing that barrel, so he has light cover, and again he would take -1. So the only clear shot that he has at this point against the minion forces is only Doug. But he's going to go ahead and still aim for Beaky Bobby, because again, he wants to get him to drop that Moonstone. Also, if you notice here, it is a 12-inch range, and he pretty much has range to every one of the Dominion figures. So like I mentioned before, Flintlock is drawing 3 arcane cards, but it's reduced -1 because of light cover, so he's drawing 2. But if we look at Beaky Bobby, we see a -1 evade, which means for the attacker it reduces it 1 more. So now Flintlock is only drawing 1 card. At this point though, we ignore Beaky Bobby's arcane score of 5. He actually doesn't draw 5 cards, but anyone who is the target of an arcane attack automatically just draws 6 regardless of what this number is. This is only 4 attacks. So Flintlock is going to draw 1. So here are the 6 arcane cards that Beaky Bobby drew. He has 1 catastrophe card, 2 purple ones, 2 green ones, and 2 blue 2s. Now this entire deck has only 3 of each color, the 1 value, 2 of the 2 values, and then only 1 3 value card of each of the colors. And then there are 3 catastrophe cards throughout the entire arcane deck. Now, the only reason why Beaky Bobby drew these cards is to have some insight into what possible card that the attacker might have. And so when we look at Flintlock, what he drew was he drew a blue 1. And if you look at his ability here of Shoot Musket, you see that he needs a green card of any value. X means any value. But he only has a blue card. But he's not stuck, because at this point, as the attacker, what Flintlock is doing is he puts down his card and he basically declares this is a green 1. So he's bluffing. But because Beaky Bobby here does have 2 greens, he thinks that Flintlock is bluffing because the chances of his 1 draw card of being another green is relatively low. So he's going to say, I think you're bluffing. If he calls the bluff, then the attacker has to flip the card over, and sure enough, it is the wrong card, so he was caught bluffing. Because he was caught bluffing, what the defending player can do now is take any one of his 6 cards and replace the card that was played, and obviously he would play Catastrophe, because what happens with Flintlock's ability is if Catastrophe is drawn, this model will suffer 2 wounds, and the reload ability cannot be used for the remainder of the game. Basically, the gun explodes and cannot be used, so this is devastating. Now, let's say that Beaky Bobby wasn't quite sure, and it was sort of like, well, he could have a 1. Basically, he's saying this is a green 1. Beaky Bobby decides, okay, I'm not going to risk it. Okay, I believe you. Flintlock actually doesn't have to reveal this card, and he actually goes ahead and performs the action as if this was a green 1. And in this case, what would happen was target would suffer the green 1, the 1 plus 2 impact damage, which would be 3 total damage, would go over to Beaky Bobby. Now, what happens if the defender calls bluff, but this ends up being actually a green 1? Then basically the attack goes ahead and goes off, and 3 points of damage would go to Beaky Bobby. Flintlock would be able to basically repeat and do that again without spending an energy. But because he doesn't have any other arcane cards, because he would have to draw another arcane card and put it down and go through the process again. And so as the defending player, you have to be careful, because if you keep calling bluff and he keeps telling the truth, this can just chain and he can just keep shooting over and over again. So you want to make sure that you as a defender aren't just calling bluff all the time. Okay, let's say the Commonwealth is finished with their turn. I'll go ahead and activate Vicious Midget. Instead of doing the free jog action, I'm going to go ahead and move him forward an inch. Let's say he actually touches that base. He actually has to stop and use the traverse action. So I spent 1 for that step, and then I have to spend 2 to traverse, and it basically makes me move to the opposite side of an obstacle a maximum of 1 inch thick. So it just moves like this. Obviously he could have just gone around, but I wanted to show you how the traverse action works in case you have to go over an obstacle. Now he's going to go ahead and use his free move action, or his free jog action, because he's going to come over here and then spend 1 to harvest to turn this into a 3. So after you go through everyone's actions, then you go ahead and start a whole nother turn. You remove any unused energy tokens, and then you replenish them based off of their stats down here, depending on whether or not they took wounds, and then you start that all over again. After round 4, you see who has more Moonstones than the other. The person who has the most Moonstones wins. And then if there's a tie, you go to sudden death with whoever picks up the next Moonstone wins the game. So in the rule book, there are boxes of more advanced rules, and I would suggest doing the base rules first until you can get that down, and then look into all of these advanced rules that are in here. One of the key ones is you can actually have reaction steps where you can use an energy to move a step away from someone who's trying to do a melee attack against you typically. There are events and agendas, which are usually one-time effects during a game. There are more terrain features. This talks about follow-up attacks. This talks about signature moves that each one of the heroes has. But these are all rules that you can definitely add as you're playing and get more used to the game. So here we are on the web page for the late back, and this is going to expire at the end of August of 2021. So if you want to jump in on this, do it quickly. And this is for the Arising, and here is the core pledge. This is giving you the campaign for Moonstone. So it's giving you the book as well as the cards that you need, in addition to this exclusive miniature. So you're not getting the miniatures that you need to play the base game, but this is for the expansion, and I'm definitely getting this because I really like the narrative and want to find out more of the lore of this world. Or you can just buy, pick and choose and buy them individually. And then there's a couple of other items that are exclusives to this Kickstarter that won't be readily available. Now everything else here is available even right now on their web store. And so go ahead and jump over there if you are not interested in picking up the Arising. If you're not interested in campaign, you can go ahead and order most of these items now and just get them shipped to you before the delivery date of this Kickstarter in November. So if you're not interested in that, go ahead and check out their web store, because all of these are available at these prices on their web store. But if you're just jumping into Moonstone, I would highly suggest getting this 2-player starter set like I showed you. It has everything that you need. And then here are bundled boxes of the factions that you have available. Other than the goblins and humans, you have the Cult of Leshevit bundle, the fawns, the gnomes, and the fairies. If you do buy the 2-player box set, you're not saving money if you buy either the goblins or the humans bundle, because it includes, for example, the humans here, the barony, which is included in the 2-player set. So you're going to get a repeat of this box, which costs $24. So here the discount is $14.50. So you're actually losing money if you buy both the 2-player set and then this bundle. You can buy each one of these boxes individually, even here in the Kickstarter. But again, if it's past August of 2021, all of these are available in their regular web store. I'm debating whether or not I'm going to fill out my goblin and human army by picking up one of these extra boxes, or if I want to mix and match and try some of the fairy models or the gnomes or the Leshevit, because you can mix and match factions as long as you have Commonwealth fighting together and the Dominion fighting together. And then down here there are some giants and trolls that I'm also trying to debate whether or not I should buy one of those for each one of my factions. But because I'm so impressed with the quality and detail of these, I might just go ahead, bite the bullet, and buy a lot of these. Let's go ahead and go to their main web store so you can check this out. So like I mentioned before, you can buy all of these individually. And again, the prices are the same from the Kickstarter. So you can purchase these now. But some of these items will be sold out as they do replenish their stock. So you can either wait or pre-order these from the late back to guarantee that you get a copy in November. Lastly, I just want to show you some of the resources that are available. Like I mentioned before, this TNG video is great for learning how to play, so I suggest if you have some time watching that. And then I would also suggest Ash's Let's Play video from Guerrilla Miniature Games. He walks through the rules really quickly and then plays through a scenario. So this is definitely a helpful resource as well. So there you have it. I hope that gives you a good sense of how Moonstone works. Again, this has my wholehearted endorsement. I think it is a super fun game and easy to go ahead and slowly build out your faction and even try out other factions, which I will definitely be doing. Once again, check out my Patreon page to see what the GGGG is for this month. And as always, happy painting, happy gaming. We'll see you next time.